just because you've made a major mistake, it doesn't mean that it's the end of your story. For example, in the Bible, there's all kinds of stories where you've had individuals make huge mistakes. I was thinking of, for example, David. David goes, he's going for a little bit of a walk on his terrace, and he notices a young lady having a bath. And he's thinking, oh, she's pretty good looking. So of course, being the king, he brings her into his boudoir and they do some intimate relationships. And the product of that, of course, was a child. And they went through all kinds of different covers up. And finally, David was found out. And David, instead of, blaming Bathsheba or, blaming the situation, he took responsibility. It wasn't the end of his story. And actually, the next product of their union was a young man named Solomon. He became king of Israel. And actually, under Solomon, Israel had a golden age. So I just want to remind you that just because you make a mistake, it doesn't mean that it is the end of your story. In fact, we have many different stories in life about people who made a comeback. For example, we can use Colonel Sanders of KFC kind of fame. He actually was an absolute disaster as a businessman until he was 65 years old. The story goes that he took his Social Security check and decided to invest it into his business. And actually, he did very well. He could cook very well. And he had his 11 different herbs and spices. And he was able to create a great, big, huge business called, of course, KFC after he was 65. It doesn't necessarily mean that your story is ending. The best could yet to come. Your victory is on the way. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln failed in every piece of business? And actually, he failed as a politician until he actually ran for president. And of course, we know the rest of the story, how that he was the great emancipator and he fought or led the American North against the rebel South and unfortunately, it cost him his life. But the reality is, he was a comeback story and is considered one of the greatest presidents of the United States. So you got to understand that just because you have some setbacks, just because of the fact that, you've made some major mistakes, what you need to do is set your head like flint. In fact, that is what Ezekiel said. He says, listen, set your head like flint and just press in to whatever victory you have. What's your dream? What is it that you actually want to see happen? I'm right now sitting in a radio station, in a radio control room. When I was 13 years old, I got a brochure from the Columbia School of Broadcasting. Right then and there, I wanted to be a broadcaster. And here I am, so many, many years later, sitting in the #1 studio when it comes to Christian radio in Canada. And I am the morning man. And I've been doing this for quite a while now. And it's kind of my dream. And so, have I had setbacks? Oh my goodness, have I had setbacks. But you see, you got to keep pressing ahead. Paul put it this way. He says, forget those things which are behind, looking forward to those things which are ahead. So this is not necessarily the end of your story. I love the story of the Filipino female heavy lifter. She is a power lifter. And when she first started off as a teenager, she didn't even make the national finals in, the Philippines. But finally, she made the team. And her first Olympics, she was way down. I mean, talking way down over, among the competitors. But she just kept trying. And then, of course, in the last Olympics, she became the gold medalist. Now, she had to go through 2 or 3 different Olympics to get there, but she never gave up. And that's what you and I must do as well. We just can't give up. You know, I love that one little Facebook post that I have. It says, rule number 1, never give up. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. So it's important to recognize that, yes, your journey is still being written. You may have to turn the page, or you may have to close the chapter. You may have to make some adjustments, but basically, understand this: your life is still being written. Now, I'm not trying to be morbid or macabre, but I am trying to tell you that day by day, you need to have certain decisions. In fact, it was John Maxwell who said, it's your daily habits, the small little daily habits that you and I have, can either propel us forward or drag us back. And so it's important to evaluate every single day. That's why I always encourage people to have a quiet time, to evaluate where you are in your life. And if you don't like what's going on, make the necessary changes. And also, as well, be ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. If there's something in your life that is dragging you back, if there is a habit that you are currently engaged in and you know that it's destructive, get it out of your life. Last night, for example, I was in a church where there was the 12-step program, and I was actually reading the 12-step program, and I was reading it to myself. And some of the things that they were talking about was, listen, you got to get rid of the heavy things that are in your life that are dragging you down, because eventually they're going to destroy you. So sometimes we got to do some pretty hard evaluation, but you got to do that because you do not want to allow your mistakes to continue. You know, one person put it this way: insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and actually believing for different results. Any scientist will tell you that if you continue doing the same experiment, you're going to end up having the same result. So you got to change it. You got to look at things differently. You've got to be ruthless with yourself, not with other people, but with yourself. And look at yourself and say, am I heading the right direction? Is this where I want to end up? And then make that decision. And also do the little course corrections. One person put it this way: you're not going to do a 1,000-mile journey, you know, but you do it one step at a time. And I remember when we had this bulldog puppy. He's now not such a puppy anymore. But I remember the very first time he was trying to go up the stairs. It was absolutely hilarious. There he was, one step at a time. But finally, he was able to get up the stairs. And when he got up the stairs, he stood there at the top, or sat there at the top of the stairs. Whoa, I've done it type situation. Now, of course, he goes up and down the stairs with no problem at all. It's a confidence thing. It really is. And so the simple fact is, if you find yourself making a mistake, do the right corrections and realize it's not the end of your story. It's not the end of your narrative. Your victory is coming. You need to recognize that and make all the adjustments that need to be made, make the little steps, the little course corrections that need to be done so that you can walk in victory and be determined and believe in yourself and believe in who God made you to be. I want to remind you about one thing. There's nobody like you on this planet. No one has, for example, your eye print. No one has your fingerprint, and nobody has your DNA. Nobody has your skill set. Nobody has your mindset. But you've got to determine what you're going to become and become the person that God intended you to be. So I just want to leave these thoughts with you today. So if you like what you've been hearing and also been seeing, I encourage you to press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. My name is Robert Dean Steele, and I want to remind you that you are actually an overcomer. You're not being overcome. You're not a victim, you're a victor. You're not being conquered, you're more than a conqueror, and you're not being defeated, you are the undefeated. Remember that today.